Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we're going to be talking about some of Tesla's innovations. We've got a new video from Sandy Munro on the Model S Plaid teardown that they're doing, and a couple other things there as well. We'll also talk about some interesting comments made on Ford's earnings call. Yesterday we had their shareholder letter, now we also have the earnings call, and we've got a couple other things, including some funny comments from BMW. Quick look at the stock. Tesla today finishing up 3.6%, which hardly feels like a move at all anymore given the recent volatility. But Tesla closing at $923.32 to end the week. The Nasdaq today was up 1.6%, significantly outperforming the S&P and the Dow. We're now about a week and a half out from Tesla's earnings report, and Tesla that day had closed at $937 before earnings. So Tesla kind of rebounding a little bit, now down just 1.5% since that report. But the Nasdaq over that same period of time up 4%. So Tesla still underperforming since that report. The market not really quickly changing its mind like we have seen on certain occasions in the past. One thing to look out for next week, Tesla should be posting their 10K annual filing probably on Monday. It was on Monday, February 8th last year, so some investors may still be waiting for that to make any decisions on Tesla one way or the other, and we certainly know that some analysts are waiting for that information. Always some interesting details in there that we'll definitely cover on the podcast too when that does come out. All right, we're going to start off today talking about a few of Tesla's different innovations, and we're starting with the Model S Plaid. If you're not aware, Sandy Munro at Munro Live has been doing a teardown of the Plaid with his team. I would definitely recommend watching all those videos. Munro in general puts out really great stuff. Today they happen to be looking at the electric drive module and the rear cradle, so basically all the housing and components going into that drive module. Munro was looking at it with one of his associates, Jordan, who has done a lot of work for them on previous versions of the Model S. So in comparison to the older generation, Jordan said, quote, "Overall, they changed a lot. If you were to look at the original Model S in comparison to this one, you wouldn't even think they were off the same vehicle," end quote. Later on in the video, he expanded on that saying, quote, "I think it is almost an entirely new generation of vehicle," end quote. So what's different here versus the older versions? Why are they having comments like this? Well, I think the biggest thing, and Munro often comes back to this in his most recent teardowns of Tesla vehicles, is cohesion. I mean, casting versus stamping is almost a perfect metaphor for that. You can either bolt a bunch of pieces together or you can do it kind of all at once. And maybe that's harder, but it can end up yielding much better results. So what Sandy and Jordan are talking about are a lot of things that are working extremely well together, not just pieces from separate areas of design or engineering that are then being pieced together. So they've talked a lot about that in the past with the octovalve or the heat pump. And they're giving Tesla a lot of the same accolades when they're looking here at the Model S Plaid. So Jordan at one point, my favorite line in the whole video, said, quote, "And man, what a packaging symphony, all the things that are going in here," end quote. So they're very impressed with that design, the ability to maximize the space that Tesla has in that area through the cohesion of the design, which Jordan there expressing as a symphony. Munro later on in the video agreed that that was a great analogy. He added, quote, "To make this stuff happen, you've got to have a different kind of culture, and they've obviously figured it out over there." Jordan drove that point home by saying that there are very few companies or examples of subsystems like they're seeing there with the Model S Plaid with this much cross-functional integration, and that's outstanding. Keep all of that sort of stuff in mind because that is going to come back a little bit later in this episode. The last comment from Munro that I want to share here was Sandy vocalizing the question that he's often asked about, is the Model S Plaid really what they're claiming it is? And in typical Sandy fashion, he gave a pretty unequivocal yes and said, quote, "I mean, you just look at this. Who's got anything like this? Nobody. I'm very impressed, hugely impressed with what I've seen and heard," end quote. So again, they are going to be continuing this teardown of the Model S. We haven't really checked in on that, so I thought today was a good opportunity to do that, but we'll continue to keep an eye on it as that teardown continues. Staying on the product theme here, we also have an update on Tesla's Berlin paint shop, or not really an update, more a video, so sorry for audio listeners, but Tesla did share a clip on their Instagram, if you do want to check it out, of a portion of the new paint shop in action. So Tesla here is dipping the car in a clean bath, they say on Instagram, and electrically applying a coating to prevent corrosion when on the road. It's definitely cool to see it in action, but at the same time, it does also, I think, give a little bit of context for why the Cybertruck is the Cybertruck. If you can make a product that doesn't have to go through these steps, that's going to speed things up and make it quite a bit cheaper. Got some news on another way that Tesla is trying to do that today as well. Tesmanian reporting on this. Tesla has filed a patent back in July that was published yesterday for digitally customizable headlights, which would allow Tesla to use the same hardware in all their vehicles and customize for different requirements in different regions with just software. Elon noting today on Twitter that this is a bigger win than it may seem. Now, I'm not sure how expensive it is in terms of time for Tesla to adjust their line for different parts like this for different regions. And as Tesla gets more localized, hopefully stuff like that becomes a little bit less important in general. but certainly there should be some savings from homologation via software like this. And then I would think the probably biggest win would be that it makes managing the supply chain for this piece easier, where they would have previously had to manage their forecast, their demand for multiple parts here, and made sure that all those parts were in good stock positions, and then adjust those orders and stock levels based on how their production allocation actually ends up shaking out. Now they or their suppliers don't have to worry about any of that if this is just one piece. Tesla can just say, hey, I need 4 million of these headlights this year. So add simplification to multiple different pieces of the production process, and you get better economies of scale on that one new part. So I would guess those are the things that Musk is conveying by this being a bigger win than it may seem, maybe some other things as well. As for the status here, I'm not really sure where this is at. I'm not sure if the patent has been just applied for or if it's been approved, but judging by Elon's reply there, he does seem confident in this working. All right, next up, I wanted to spend just a couple minutes going through some interesting comments that Ford made on their earnings call yesterday. Right off the bat in the opening comments from CEO Jim Farley, a couple interesting things. First, he said, quote, "We can't grow a profitable BEV business without a very healthy ICE business," end quote. Now, he carried on to say that they're increasing their ICE business profitability through things like connectivity. So I think he was kind of presenting it as, hey, our ICE business is going to continue to become healthier and healthier. But what he is saying there is that if they can't do that, then they can't grow a profitable BEV business. And to me, that would be a little bit alarming if I were a Ford shareholder, because I think there certainly seem to be a lot of headwinds for internal combustion engine vehicle businesses that are coming soon. Farley later said that, quote, "So our goal is to continue to improve our automotive EBIT margins." Let me say that again. "Our goal is to continue to improve our auto EBIT margins even as we ramp up the mix of BEVs," end quote. I mean, sure, it sounds great, but that's a pretty lofty target when you have a company like Tesla that is disrupting so quickly. You're trying to build a new business in a realm that a direct competitor is already dominating and moving more quickly than you are in. Generally, that's an expensive endeavor, even if Tesla weren't what it is. So unless that yields stronger margins than their internal combustion engine vehicle business, then they're also sitting there and saying that even though their internal combustion engine business is going to be shrinking, they're somehow going to be able to make it more profitable. Now, maybe less investment in internal combustion engine vehicles and less capital and then depreciation of that capital. Maybe some of those things can help as you kind of wind down a business. The goals do change a little bit, and sometimes that can yield better profitability. But all in, it seems like a pretty lofty goal from Ford, so we'll see how it goes for them. I would say that what they're talking about here does seem pretty possible in a supply-constrained environment. They can actually have decent profitability on their EVs, while there aren't many EVs out there to be had, and this is a common criticism against Tesla, but probably actually applies more to companies like Ford and GM. Right now, they've got a lot of pent-up demand for their electric vehicle offerings because they are really brand new. I think we've gotten to a point where Tesla has really proven the competitiveness and the lasting nature of their demand, but I do think it's still an open question for these other automakers. I mean, we've seen with the Jaguar I-Pace, sales definitely can fall off after that initial wave. Not saying that'll happen to Ford, but their demand certainly has not been proven to the degree that Tesla's has. Another comment from the call that I wanted to highlight was in response to a question about a statement that Ford put in their earnings letter. They said that they expect global production capacity for BEVs to be at least 600,000 by the end of 2023. So analyst Mark Delaney of Goldman Sachs, who also covers Tesla, asked about that, saying, how do you expect the linearity of reaching that 600,000 vehicle capacity to look? And Farley's response here really didn't clarify much for me. So he talked about the Mach-E, said that this year they'll move close to 100,000 units on the Mach-E. Said, quote, "That'll be our big move this year. Next year, our big move will be the Lightning, going to 150,000 units. Then went on to talk about how they've already made the decision to redesign the factory that's going to be doing this to accommodate that 150,000 units. And then that was kind of it on that answer. So 100,000 Mach-E, 150,000 Ford Lightning. I don't really know how they're getting up to that 600,000 vehicle capacity. Maybe just kind of a flub in answering the question, but that didn't really offer any clarity to me. The last thing that I want to highlight from their earnings call then was some discussion around the profitability of EVs. As they have said before, they reiterated that the Mach-E is profitable, but said that, quote, "But overall, as we said in the past, our fab margins are not quite where we like them to be, especially relative to our more profitable ICE vehicles," end quote. So that should show how important their ICE profitability is for them in their targets of actually improving profitability. Anyway, back to the Mach-E, he said, quote, "What we're finding in Mach-E is that actually most of the exciting work starts after job one. That's when the OTAs really make a customer impact. But on the cost side and the profit side, I guess we have learned so much about the lack of integration in our engineering operations. as we compared our engineering on Mach-E to others that are best in class. And we are finding lots of profit opportunities as we get after that integration between engineering, supply chain, and manufacturing, even within engineering, end quote. This is exactly what Sandy Munro was talking about. Ford's making it very clear there that that is an entirely new way of thinking for them. Okay, so maybe that allows them to figure it out and close the gap, or maybe it shows how big that gap is if they're just kind of getting to some of these things. Anyway, we'll move on from the call, but I do want to tie in a tweet yesterday from Tesla's head of investor relations, Martin Viecha. Seems very fitting for this discussion that we just had. He said, quote, "It seems that valuation based on current vehicle sales is an outdated metric. What if value of a company consists of size of the current EV business, plus future potential value of the EV business, plus future value of FSD, energy, etc., minus cost of disassembling ICE business," end quote. So that last piece, that's one of the most stark contrasts that we see in the market right now, is what are these internal combustion engine vehicle businesses worth? Are they actually worth anything? Or maybe do they have even negative value? I'm sure there's a spectrum of opinions on that, and Tesla investors probably lean more towards the latter end of that spectrum, while a lot of participants in the market probably lean more towards the former end, the ICE being profitable end, and that is what Ford is communicating in their earnings report. Again, in a supply-constrained environment, I think it's easy to present the business in that manner, but that's only going to last so long, and I think those market conditions can change extremely quickly for these legacy automakers. Economies of scale can as well. If and when that happens, if the electric vehicle business isn't ready to then carry the load, it can get ugly fast. So that's the tightrope that legacy automakers are trying to walk on right now. And I think the market conditions are sort of supporting that tightrope for now, but it'll be fascinating to watch how some of this stuff changes over the next year, year and a half or so. All right, last item for the day and for the week as well. So let's wrap up with a little bit of comedy here from BMW. This is from Automobile Woche. They've got some comments from BMW CEO Oliver Zipse, who is warning against a too early and thoughtless ban on combustion engines. He says, quote, "But the largest market segment in absolute terms is by far the combustion engine in Germany, but also in Europe and worldwide. Before you simply switch off something like this, within 8 or 10 years, you have to know what you're doing there," end quote. Sometimes I come across some of this stuff and I just can't help but laugh as I'm reading it. And this was one of those instances with Zipse over the course of about half a sentence talking about flipping a switch and then also saying that it would be within 8 or 10 years. That is not flipping a switch, especially at this point when we're well into the process. Like I said, Tesla's been producing EVs for almost 15 years now. They've been producing the Model 3 for 5 years now almost. Throw another 8 to 10 years on there. That is not flipping a switch. So I had to chuckle at that. He also went on to say that if you try to ban this technology in Germany and Europe, but the world market is not that far along, then you will lose this technology on the world market. Quote, "Therefore, we also warn against doing this too early and not giving the transformation a chance to develop with the markets. It would be harmful if you simply gave up a technology in which you have a world market position without need, and then others just went into this market segment. I think that doesn't help the climate or anyone else," end quote. All right, not really sure I understand the argument here. He's basically saying that, hey, if you ban it in Germany, then I guess BMW can no longer sell in these other markets that need to be developed that he's talking about. I don't think anyone's really talking about banning the export of internal combustion engine vehicles. It seems like BMW could definitely still do that if they wanted to, just like the competition that would apparently be taking all of their market share under this scenario would be doing as well. So I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me, but best of luck there, BMW, with being all in on delaying as your primary strategy. All right, that is where we'll leave it for today and for the week then. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. Also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday for the February 7th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.